Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are dialing in from. So good to talk to all of you and host, some of my friends here in this panel, which is so exciting always when you have familiar faces. Just wanted to quickly introduce what we're here for today. This is the virtual speaker series as part of the Product Leader Summit. Many of you have probably heard of the Product Leader Summit. It's an annual fall conference of product leaders that happens in the Bay Area. Are right now open, so feel free to check productleadersummit.com and apply for the flagship conference. And this virtual speaker series was really born from an idea of how do we engage the community at a much more deeper, intimate level with topics of real relevance and real talk. So happy to see how the speaker series has evolved and to see all of you here. As part of this speaker series, we also have a stellar volunteer team that is here with us. So aside from myself, there is Nishit, and there is Tommy, and there is Parul. We all do this for the love of the craft and for the sake of bringing the community together. And so we really appreciate all of your time. And I cannot wait for today's topic, because it really plays into the mission of what the speaker series was built around, which is, really fostering the next generation of speakers like you and me. And the second is we've heard time and again that some of our best learnings are through peers and peer connections. And so we want to kind of facilitate and have a platform that enables that. So quickly, what we have today as we're going through the introductions, we'll have the speaker and panel discussion on what I think is a really relevant topic today, because these product leaders that we're speaking to today have actually done what could possibly be the impossible that many of us are trying to achieve, which is to transition in this extremely competitive and, according to the Atlantic Post, frozen job market. So we're going to hear some real talk, real strategies from them that I'm excited about. And obviously, they're all here to be able to answer your questions. If we have time, we'll do a small group networking and close with that. Again, in the end, we value your feedback. And so we're going to probably, pepper the conversation with some NPS feedback from you, which will really help all of us volunteers improve the programming and the content. So we really value your feedback. So please don't miss out on that. With that, I give it to Parul, who is going to be facilitating the conversation today. Parul and I met, I don't know, how many years ago, Parul? Like pre-pandemic?
2018, I think, 2018 or 19.
Gosh, time flies. And we were on a panel together, and Parul was one of those product leaders that was both, that had struck strong. What actually stood out for me for Parul was her strong communication skills. She listened, she spoke. And so we thought, in this time and age, for this panel with this caliber of people, and I'm so fortunate to call, Lori and Navya, friends. And so nice to meet Sandra too. I thought Parul would be the perfect person to kind of bring all of this together and help us have some real talk around how they made their transitions that we can all walk away with some insights. So Parul, take it away.
Thank you for that kind introduction, Shubha. Hello, everyone. My name is Parul Goyal, and I am a Senior Director of Product at Indeed. And I have been a product manager for about 15 years or so. So, like many of you, I have seen this job market be dynamic, but I have never seen it be so brutal. Like in just the last year, I have had countless conversations with people in my network about navigating layoffs and a really challenging frozen job market. And we kind of sometimes get desensitized to the numbers, right? 5% workforce is being laid off by these big tech companies, or 14,000 people, or 1,800 applicants for one job on LinkedIn. But behind each of these numbers, the stories are really personal. Like these are careers at pause. These are people whose confidence might have been shaken, or families who are having to make financial trade-off decisions. But even in time of such chaos, there are always stories of hope. So I am incredibly honored to have three product leaders who, even against such odds, were able to find senior product leadership roles, so VP and CPO roles. So we are going to deep dive into their journey of job search, what worked, what surprised them, and hopefully walk away with very actionable tips and tricks. So let's start with maybe a quick round of introductions, but really setting the stage for your job search journey for each of you. So quick introduction, what triggered your job search? How long did it take? And then what was the biggest challenge you faced? So Navya, maybe we kick off with you.
Great. Well, thank you for having me here. It's really nice to see all the familiar faces here. And happy Friday to everyone. I am Navya. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Talent. We are one of the largest job search platforms specifically focused on hands-on workforce. So don't go to talent.com to look for a product role. There might be some there, but our focus there is typically for electricians, nurses, delivery truck drivers, and so forth. Your question was about my job search journey. So interestingly, I was CPO at another startup before Talent. I've been at Talent 4 months. And at the last company, I was this VP and CPO for 8 years. And I actually wasn't looking to switch. Even after 8 years, I was having a lot of fun. The business was growing. There were a lot of challenges to solve. There were product challenges, a lot of fun things to work on. My team was amazing, and I really wasn't looking to leave. So Talent was actually an inbound. And the journey was, it was a mix of me first knowing that it was time to leave, then working on my pitch and positioning myself for this role. And the biggest challenge I would say for me was it was pretty evident to the team at Talent that I wasn't ready to leave my last job. So I had to first convince myself, and then, midway through the journey, actually change my strategy and come in really strong about my interest level and to position myself as the CPO that they need. I'm happy to dig in more, but I'm sure there'll be more questions.
Thank you, Navya. Laurie, do you want to go next?
Sure. So I'm so grateful to be here in community. I cannot stress enough how much community is really important for product right now. And so it's really just great to be here. So I am Laurie Martel, and I am the CPO for a fintech called InvestorFlow. And so really my background is fintech, my background is data. And so this was a pretty great place to come, where what we're doing in the market is we're helping venture capital and private equity and innovation basically both raise and deploy capital to companies right out there. And how do we digitally engage those investors along the way? So it's kind of like this mix of innovation and financial services at the same time. So was really a unique fit for me. In terms of my search, and some people in this room were in my search with me for a very long time. I'm going to get a little bit vulnerable here, like in the hopes that it's relatable. And like, for those of you who are out there, just know, like, there are people out here to do it. But my initial trigger for my search was involuntary, sudden, and not performance related, right? So for all of those of you who are out there right now that have been laid off and were surprised or anything like that, like that's where I was sitting, and I had never had to look for a job before, right? Because the next thing always came to me. And so I was out for 2 years for that. And so I was 30 days shy of my 2-year anniversary, and like every anniversary is a hard anniversary when you're in transition for that long. So the biggest challenge, I'm sure, won't be surprising to many of you. It's the ups and downs, the emotional side of that, and really balancing that with like the length of the job search, the emotional ups and downs, but yet knowing what my superpower was, right? Like, and this is my skills, this is what I'm good at. And like just balancing that, like you go from really highs and really lows and doubt and like what happened? Like my skill set was wanted, and I've been in startups, I've IPO'd, I've worked with big financial institutions. Like, what is going on here? So that was the biggest challenge.
The roller coaster of emotions and self-doubt. We will definitely talk about those,
Mm-hmm.
Laurie. Thank you for being vulnerable. Sandra, do you wanna go next?
Yeah. Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me today. I'm excited to chat about this topic. So, a little bit of background: I recently joined as SVP of product at a company called Hop Skip Drive. So, we are a tech company that is focused on solving student transportation challenges and creating opportunity through mobility. So, think about a lot of vulnerable populations like foster kids, homeless kids, kids that maybe are on IEPs or student special needs and maybe need a little bit of extra support. We really want to create sort of the right systems in place to help them get to school every single day. Prior to joining Hop Skip Drive, I was the Chief Product Officer at Sitter City and was there for almost 7 years, where I led our product design and engineering teams. And for me, kind of what triggered my search was probably a really intentional career break to reset after being in not only a high intensity role there, but also had spent the previous 6 years before that at Grubhub as the second product hire. And so had kind of a number of back-to-back roles that were really taxing in a lot of ways. During my time at Sitter City, navigated an acquisition while dealing with homeschooling a kindergartner, while also taking on a lot of expanded roles during departures of other leadership team members. And so for me, I had originally kind of gone to my CEO and said, yeah, I might want to take a short sabbatical, kind of a couple weeks. And sort of that kind of evolved over time, where ultimately I decided that I really wanted to be intentional about my break. Thought it was going to be very short, but my CEO actually gave me the advice to take at least 100 days. And so I tried to really embrace that and ended up actually choosing to take about 6 months after leaving my role to spend time with family and spend time to reset. And I think probably didn't realize how burnt out I really was until I'd actually had the time and space to do that. And I give actually a lot of credit to Ha for really being encouraging around being intentional about career breaks and using that time in meaningful ways. From the time I started searching, I probably spent about 3 months, but my lens was actually treated it a lot like a structured product launch. So I did a lot of sort of testing different approaches, refining my positioning, kind of iterating on what worked, and was really intentional about really leaning into what were the values that mattered most to me, and really aligned with my longer term career goals, and how I could actually lean into kind of my network and actually the role of community and the importance it plays in really kind of finding that right fit, and also having a sounding board. I had a Never Search Alone group that I joined, which was actually formed by many folks from PLS, and really embraced, I think, the local community here in Chicago to also kind of get advice and help, because there's definitely, kind of, it can be a roller coaster. And I think having that support system is really important, and something that really, for me, ended up being a big game changer in how I both approached my search, but knowing that I had a lot of great people in my network who were cheering me on and providing some confidence on days where I wasn't always feeling as confident.
Thank you. Thank you all for that. Okay, so now that we have set the stage, everyone has more context about your journeys. Let's get into strategies that work. And I feel like all of you have kind of touched on this, but maybe we do, like, again, another round of three top strategies that work for you. Laurie, maybe we start with you, because you did this the longest. You probably tried the most things.
Yeah. So I think the best strategy, networking, right? Like I cannot say it enough, networking. And I am an introvert, right? So networking for introverts is no joke, right? And so, yeah, Sandra, you already mentioned it. Never search alone, like JSC 360, right? Like we're talking early days. And I cannot talk any better about the program, right? Like, because especially for us product people, it was so practical and gave me the structure that I needed. And like, who knew, right? Like, if I'm the product, I know how to put products in the market, but did I know how to put me in the market? No, right? And so Never Search Alone just gave me that. It gave me a whole new group of people. Like when my job went open, so did my closest support network, my latest support network, right? Because that just all went away overnight. So, getting in and getting that support from new people, like that were all over the country, and then getting in community, right? Like I'm a member of Sidebar, I'm a member of Never Search Alone, and I was also a member of Chief. And so like just getting out into community, like that's what I would always say. And I was like that VP and product leader that always told my people, like, go out into community, make sure you're talking to people, like product leader summit. Never did it myself, right? Like didn't have time, needed to get the next roadmap item out, needed to get ready for the next client event, needed to get on the road, with the sales team, right? But like really networking and doing that. Also, just if you are not Never Search Alone, like one of the good resources was a book that Phil talks about in Taking the Work Out of Networking, which is Networking for Introverts. And like I read that cover to cover and then bit by bit later, right? Like, because you can't just read these things like through and think you're going to do it all, right? Like going back when you're in that stage was super important, right? Like, and being like, how do I come to that? So, yeah.
So your three but networking is your big thing. Communities, Never Search Alone, and then really just finding networking that works for you. So in your case, it was the book,
Yes.
Networking for Introverts.
Yeah. And I guess in that networking, the tools, right? Like, I mean, we're product people, right? Tools, like making sure that I wasn't just asking for people like for a meeting, but I just went forward with, here's my Calendly. I'd love to talk to you. Like, here you go, book now, and making sure that was integrated to my Zoom and to everything, or doing like being like, I'll meet you for coffee here in San Francisco on this day. Like those kinds of technology and tools to automatically schedule and do things were there.
Hello, everyone. If you're just joining, just make sure, please, you're on the mute. All right. Sandra, what about you? You also mentioned Never Search Alone. Maybe you can just describe what it is and then also talk about other tactics that work for you.
Yeah. So Never Search Alone, for those of you that have not met Phil Terry, they are really, I think, an inspiration in trying to create community around being able to do just that, never searching alone. That I think in the process, it really helps with refining and aligning on, maybe some important things around, what are the things that maybe you love from a past role? What are the things that you hate? How do you think about your must-haves versus your must-nots? And reflecting on strengths and weaknesses, as well as short-term and longer-term career goals, and doing so in a way where you've got kind of accountability and partners who are also kind of going through this process with you, and being able to talk about that together. I think really being able to have people that are sort of going through that, for me, I think was just really one of the most valuable parts of that. And really want to also echo kind of the role of networking and the role of marketing that Lori touched on. I think one of the learnings I had was sometimes when you're trying to find a job, I think probably early on, really thought that I needed to go wide so that I wasn't excluding possibilities. But the reality for me actually ended up being that that wasn't the right approach, that I wanted to be the right needle in the right haystack. And some of that actually was a big mental shift of shifting to how do you actually market yourself? Because this is, at the end of the day, this is a marketing exercise and the product is you. And that was, I think, something that, probably many folks here have embraced, kind of how do I look at my LinkedIn profile? How do I think about the content that I'm posting? And I, was probably trying to post and comment on articles from the lens of other product, kind of people. But the reality was that my audience maybe wasn't product people. It was actually, how do I better market myself to the specific kinds of companies whose problems I'm well equipped to actually be able to solve. And so that for me was just like a slight nuance in my own search, because it actually changed the way that I ended up kind of positioning things and really curating my my lens and kind of as I was getting interviews, sort of how I was creating that shaping and framing. And so, we'll also kind of call out that, like, in those 5 minutes when you are in an interview and somebody is sharing, tell me about yourself. That was a place where I really tried to make sure that I was refining that and using that as an opportunity to really hone in where my background and skills were directly connected to kind of the company and the role that I was interviewing with. I think it's really easy to get into I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, but really looking at it from the lens of what is the problem that I've got the background and experience to help solve for this particular role.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I would love to hear more about like how you're, once you had this mindset change that that you're kind of marketing your profile to a different segment that you had originally thought. What changed then? Actually, Navya, why don't we go to you? And your tactics, top tactics.
Sure. Yeah. So I mentioned I wasn't looking for a job, but I actually was working on myself for several years, right? I exactly knew I had a strategy doc that talked about the CEO persona, what they are looking for, what their problems are, what they actually want in a CPO, and then exactly the stage of the company that I wanted, the domain that I wanted to go. So, and I continued to iterate on it for years. And that also meant that every time there was an inbound, I always took the call. Even if it wasn't the right role, I would talk to the recruiter. I would use the time to get feedback on my LinkedIn, talk about, how I'm thinking about my next role and ask them very clearly on, feedback on those parameters, but then also offer to help them, right? Offer the Product Leader Summit channel is something that I've been very active at. So I would continue to post jobs for other CPOs so that, they could get the leads and they could benefit from that. So I think that would be the biggest tactic, because coming out of these years of conversations with recruiters, I had a storyline, and my storyline was I'm a business-focused CPO. I actually can measure product ROI. I've done podcasts on that. My domain expertise is around marketplaces and vertical SaaS. And that also meant that for years, I did a lot of public speaking, because and I wasn't doing that for looking for a job. I actually was doing that to share what I know. And I was felt quite passionate about it. So whenever there was a speaking opportunity, I would force myself to pick a new topic, because that would be a forcing function for me to go deep on areas that were in my strategy doc where I wanted to show my strengths. And coming out of this with years, I now have a lot of content that I've created. And in my interview process, there were many podcasts that I had done that I would continue to share with the interviewers. If I'm talking to a CFO, I would say, oh, I've done a talk about FP&A and product. Let me send you this. If I'm talking to a CEO and they're asking about roadmap, I'll have another podcast to talk about that as well. The final thing I'll say here is, Never Search Alone was mentioned a few times. I didn't use it myself, but I have a good story here. There's a Lenny's podcast around Never Search Alone. It's an hour and a half. I highly recommend listening to it. And there's one tip there that actually I passed on to a very good friend that really worked. And that friend was looking for a job for 2 years as well. And the tip was, as you network people, you put your name out there, you're probably not top of mind. People talk to you and say, I'll get back to you if I see something. And the idea in that podcast was to actually send a monthly newsletter. And what the newsletter is to, 60, 100 people that you've been in touch with, and you keep, you take their permission and ask them that you're going to send a newsletter to them. And you talk about how your job search journey is going. And you talk about, hey, this month was a slow month. This was a more active month. I had some in-person interviews. I went to this conference. Here's what I learned. And as I'm having these conversations, here's exactly what I'm looking for. So, and here's my resume, and here's how you can talk about me if you want to make introductions. So, that was a really helpful tactic in that podcast that I wanted to pass along, even though I didn't use it personally. It was a big success. My friend actually, after 2 years, did use the monthly newsletter, and after the 4th newsletter, got the job because of that monthly newsletter.
What a great tactic, Navya. Just to stay top of mind. People want to help you, right? But they have own priorities. Thank you for sharing that. All right, we're going to do a quick fire question and then go back to some more specifics. One word to describe your job search journey. And Sandra, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I think for me, probably iterative. I definitely sort of started it with one lens and one perspective of where I thought I was going to go. And I think similar to Navia, I took every single call that I got, even if it wasn't necessarily an industry or role that I felt was perfect. For me, that actually was a really helpful lens to help me narrow and winnow exactly the kinds of things that I knew I wanted and didn't want, and to be more intentional in my search, and then kind of continue to iterate on what that looked like.
Laurie, one word to describe your job search journey?
One word, other than long, was persevering, right? Like believe that you can persevere through it.
Nice. And Navya?
I would say intentional, and I took those calls, and sometimes I felt
Yeah.
like I was walking away, but because it didn't match the parameters, but I was very intentional about exactly what I wanted. And every conversation that I had was with intention to refine my job search strategy.
So actually, this is a good segue into the next two topics I want to talk about. One is recruiters. Um, did any of you work with one of these job search agencies, or if like did you intentionally build relationship with recruiters who were reaching out to you? Was that a strategy at all, either of you, if any of you applied?
Yeah, I can definitely speak to that. I think for me, I think probably similar to most roles and every call that I was taking, I take that same lens with recruiters, because I think that really the time when you need recruiters and building those relationships isn't the time to start right when you're in the midst of a search. That a lot of that really comes from relationships that you craft and create over time. And the most productive conversations I'd had were with people who I'd actually developed, longer term connections with over a period of many years, who understood my background or were able to actually share that they had roles that actually matched my experience. And so ultimately the role that I found was through a recruiter, and was with a company I'd worked with for or had kind of taken calls over the last probably 5 years, and so
Okay.
it was a helpful lens.
Got it. Okay. So I just want to understand that a little bit more, Sandra. So this this company that the recruiter was with, they would reach out to you and you would engage with, like, what did that look like, building a relationship with them over the last 5 years?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that was interesting for me was that I actually, kind of, it was with a number of different people who had been within kind of a similar company, and so they understood, and probably saw and understood my, kind of how I'd grown over a period of time, or how responsibilities and roles had changed. But I think one of the parts that as they maybe interviewed for different positions over time, if things didn't end up working out, I think one of the parts that I tried to do was really, use a go-giver mindset, and continue to help provide, hey, if I'm not the right match, I actually may have some ideas of some other people that may help. And so continuing to create a relationship that wasn't transactional, meaning a one-way lens, but thinking about where there may be opportunities to help build that for something over time. For me, I think had ended up working out really well.
Got it. Got it. And then for Navya, Laurie, for either of you, was this a big part of your strategy, cultivating relationship with recruiters?
Yeah, it was very much in helping me create my storyline. So a concrete example there is, like, every time I would talk to a recruiter, I would find a way to help them. I would say, what are you looking for? Let me help you with leads. But then I would say, here's my criteria. And based on what you're seeing in my LinkedIn, what is actually a gap, right? And one of the things that I didn't know was a gap that I heard from the recruiter, for example, was because Peak's name wasn't, that well known. People knew it was a Series C company. They actually didn't know that I had a pretty big product org. So I had like 5 directors and VPs, and it was actually not clear in my LinkedIn. So through these conversations, I actually got to know what was missing, so that every time when the time actually came, I led with the things that were missing. So yeah, I mean, I would say, find ways to help them, and then use them as your thought partner to continue to improve your storyline.
Yeah, an excellent tactic. I never thought of that they would be a good source to to give you that feedback. They do it every day, multiple times a day.
Yeah, I think
Laura,
asking
you
for
want to- Oh,
I
sorry,
was
go
gonna say,
ahead.
yeah, I was just gonna build on that and say, I think in general, asking for feedback, whether from recruiters, whether from, peers, whether from, kind of other communities, I think was a really important and shaping point for me of, I'm also part of a sidebar group. So we actually spent time going through, kind of my LinkedIn page together, refining, kind of the bio and really making sure that, was spending time, identifying like what's my superpower, how do I think about current product, and some of these things were really helpful in asking for help, asking for feedback. So definitely advocate that.
Nice.
I would say I think my experience on the recruiter side was different. And I know I've talked to quite a few people, even in Never Search Alone, that made it a little bit different. And that is when I was out, most of the recruiters were being laid off too. So there really wasn't like in previous job searches, like I said, I never really had to look for a job because there was a recruiter that I could connect to and get connected to jobs. But that all of a sudden dried up, right? Like when we were doing it. And part of Never Search Alone like actually asks you to go out and get in relationship with recruiters and ask them these questions. And what we were hearing in our JSCs is nobody was taking our calls, right? Like, and so how do I get connected to recruiters when it's very difficult right now, right? And so what I did then is slow down. Like I didn't make that a gate from moving forward with my candidate market fit and talking to more and more people, right? Like I was like, I have to kind of put this aside. And I do think that different organizations like Sidebar and Never Search Alone kind of came around that and started like recruiting groups of recruiters that could help where we didn't have access before. So I do think maybe that's getting a little bit better.
I see. Okay.
And then when you did get the one person that could give you like that boost, right? Like I got one or two recruiters that were like sat down with me and said, this is what you're going to do. I just make sure now going forward, I am sending people their way, right? Like it is a give and take and do that. But the recruiter channel was all of a sudden a channel that dried up, right? Like and I didn't have a lot of runway there. I know they're there, right? But just to talk about kind of that elephant in the room.
Yeah.
Right?
One question that I have for, you see a job posting, and now it's becoming more common for companies to be transparent about the comp level for that job, right? So Navya and Sandra, both of you mentioned that you would basically, if a recruiter reached out to you, you would engage in that call. What if the comp was like beneath your level, like not something that you would be interested in? Would you still take that opportunity to hone your storytelling, or was that a filter for you? How did you balance like spending your time well versus using every opportunity you get to hone your story?
Yeah, I took every call, and I took every call to build a relationship, to find a way to help, to make sure even the comp range in my head was actually meeting the reality, and always continue to hone my storytelling. So yeah, I always did it. It doesn't take that long. It's a 10-minute call, and over the years, I would say with the market, those calls were also going down, it wasn't like 2021, 2022. So definitely used every opportunity there.
And then you said it was just a 10-minute call because after that call, you would tell them that you're not interested, but you can refer them to other people who
I would lead with it. Yeah, I would say, these things take time and I'm not interested in this specific role. And I actually even said that in an email. I would say, hey, I would love to get on a call just so you know, I'm not in the market, but, I would love to build a relationship and find a way to help in any way I can.
And Sandra, what was your tactic for this? Did you have a filter?
I did the same where I took every call. And I think part of that is for me was also calibrating on whether, kind of my expectations, I had been in the role for almost 7 years, and so I wanted to actually calibrate, just given how much volatility there had been, whether that was changing or showing up differently from an overall package perspective. But I think a lot of times that conversation wasn't always a call number one discussion. That a lot of times for me it was really just calibrating on was this role the right fit? Take the call, learn more, kind of go from there.
I feel like just to because somebody brought this up, so I too took every call and got my job not through my network but through one of those calls, right? Like recruiter reached out to me, but somebody brought up in the chat, which is worth like mentioning, take every call. Recruiters will reach out and call. But what they won't typically do is text you or reach out on WhatsApp and then tell you how great your background is and how you're a fit for them. Okay, like they will not typically do that, right? And so that has been typically a scam. Now, if I just want to put that out there because people were asking that question, how do you know the difference, right? And so it was alluring, like when I first started getting some of those texts, and then I kind of quickly learned, don't provide too much information, right? Like if that's how they're reaching out to you. So just something to be aware of there.
Got it. So what platform would you call our trusted, Lori?
Well, like I said, I took every call and I did use LinkedIn to do that, but I also didn't blast. Do you know what I mean? I didn't blast out things. I used LinkedIn for intimate asks, right? On that. So if that makes sense.
Let's do another quick fire question, and then I want to talk about just the emotional aspect of it, and then I want to make sure we have at least 10 to 15 minutes for audience question, because I'm sure there are many out there. Okay, one thing you learned about yourself through this process, and whoever's ready first can go.
I would say, I always, I'm an introvert, and many people don't believe me when they say that, but I'm a real introvert. And one thing I learned about myself was that it's possible to do networking if you show up authentically. And, Suba and I probably met, a year ago at a sidebar dinner, and we had a great conversation, for example, because we were talking about things that we cared about, and there was no agenda. So I learned my lesson. And initially, I would say when I was in my first job, when people would say, you need to network to get ahead, it felt like people are telling me I need to eat vegetables, which and I don't know how many people like here. I still dread them. My kids eat them. My kids struggle with them too. But it almost felt like, you like eating vegetables. But if you show up authentically, you can make the best connections, was the lesson here.
Nice.
I would say I think mine was resilience, and Shubha, we actually had a discussion one time, like in the thick of it. I was like, I am not very resilient, like I was like up, down, sideways, and like one day Shubha came and said, hey, will you speak on a panel about resilience? And I was like, what? And so, but that, I feel like that really was like what I was learning along the way.
Yeah, and actually that's how Lori and I met.
Yes.
We were on that panel together about resilience.
And Parul, you and I were on the panel about networking.
Network, that's true.
Yes.
We were on the panel about networking.
So this is an evergreen topic for sure.
Yeah. Sandra?
Yeah, I think for me, one of it was probably the importance of storytelling.
Yeah.
So, it's not always about, listing accomplishments or your skills. Really, it's about, how you can tie experiences together in a cohesive way that, kind of connects things back to the role that you're actually pursuing. Instead of just focusing on the what I did, really sharing more about why I did it, how I approached it, what impact it may have had, and really being able to share sort of how my background and unique perspectives, kind of mattered and had like a very clear through line, and how it actually positioned me to sort of deliver in a way that was authentic and genuine to me.
And Sandra, do you think how did you refine the storytelling? Was it like preparing on your own? Was it practicing? Was it all of the above?
Yeah, I mean, in many ways, I actually relied on AI and other things to help with
Okay.
crafting that.
Yes.
I, used ChatGPT a lot in my search and tried to think about things like, all right, so I've identified, I know things like my Myers-Briggs, what is the stuff that's in my resume, my Clifton Strengths Finder, the things that are valuable to me on a personal level and things that are valuable to me in a professional role. And a lot of times I'd actually kind of use that to help reinforce and think about, both how my background in anthropology and human-centered leadership and the product experience, like putting that all together and actually having that help me refine and craft an elevator pitch that made sense and worked, and would use a lot of ChatGPT to help with also just interview prep, doing kind of SWOT analysis and prep for interviews, doing practice practice questions, and so a lot of that was just continued refinement over time, but trying to think about ways that kind of tools could help move that forward.
Wow. Thank you. I'm glad you mentioned that. That's a good thing to mention. Like now with ChatGPT, you have such a powerful tool on your tips to be able to help you with this. Let's talk about the emotional aspect of it. How did you stay motivated when things were slow or you were getting rejections? Lori, maybe we start with you.
Yeah, I think it was in who I surrounded myself with, right? Like, and so I had, like, each week I was like, okay, I am going to have coffee, like, even if it was networking, but it was going back to like old colleagues and asking for their advice and like reconnecting with the people that I had lost touch with, over the years, and just coming back to that. And the number, like, what always gave me the boost was the number of people that said yes.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Okay.
every little yes really worked, right? And so, yeah, when you get really demotivated, right? It's like somebody is saying right now with that rejection,
Yeah.
like I would, call somebody that I hadn't talked to in a while, and I was like, hey, let's have coffee and tell me, like, tell me about where you're at. And then that became repetitive, right? So, and so that really, really helped me through. And there was people that, I mean, it's just amazing, the people that say yes, right? And they're, I hadn't talked to in 10 years,
Yeah.
right? That were like, yeah, let's have coffee. Oh, by the way, I live down the street from you now. And I was like, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah. Okay.
There.
So discovering again the old relationships. It's also celebrating small yeses that you were getting, even in networking.
Celebrate the small yeses. I tracked them, right? Like I tracked every
Gosh,
meeting,
amazing.
every application, right? Like, and when I got the best feeling was a good conversation.
Nice. Sandra, Navya,
Yeah.
anything?
Yeah, I think for me, I think part of it was reminding myself that job searches, especially at an executive level, are a lot of times about fit and about timing. And I think for me, being able to focus on what I knew I could control was an important part of that, and keeping a longer term perspective. Because I think that there were lots of times when I felt like I was the always a bridesmaid, never a bride, where on paper, I was the perfect fit for this particular role. I would get into late stages and then ultimately, ran into times when I was either ghosted completely or was we ended up going with somebody who actually has done this exact role in this exact vertical, in this exact industry. And really, those moments can be challenging, and, can really feel, for me, I think was just a place that, kind of taking that step back and remembering that I needed to stop thinking about it from the lens of, kind of chasing any role, to chasing the right job for me was, I think, a big part of it. So that shift from I need a job to I'm looking for the right job, I think probably gave me a little bit more of that kind of confidence in both navigating those tougher moments, but also being able to just kind of probably changing the mental way of how I was probably showing up.
Yeah. Navya, anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I would say the belief, and my dad always says that things always happen for a reason, and the right thing is waiting for you. He would always say that whenever I would feel disappointed. So I always held on to the belief. But also, there's a quick little story from maybe 10, 12 years ago. I had a job offer from a startup. And the CEO was pitching me on that role, like was saying, hey, you should talk to our board, you should talk to our investors, you should talk to our customers, we're doing really well. But I ended up walking away from that job because it wasn't the right title and just didn't feel right, right? And then 10 years later, I find a tweet storm from the CEO talking about the exact month and the exact year and talking about how they were going through financial struggles and how it was the worst time in that CEO's life, right? So I always reminded myself of that story because I dodged that bullet, and I was kind of disappointed. I was disappointed at that time, but it's the belief that things always happen for a reason, and you never really know what's actually going on at the company, and just stay at it because the right opportunity will come, will find you when the time is right.
Right. Yeah. It is also about luck. You're absolutely right. One last question is about self-doubt. Is, how do you not take rejection personally? How do you not internalize it? And you said that, Sandra, that you changed your mindset that I am looking for the right job, and this maybe wasn't the right job for me. Any other tips to not internalize failure when you kind of face it repeatedly?
I use ChatGPT for affirmations. My ChatGPT knows me really well. So when I have days of self-doubt, I actually just say, like, tell me, I'm really disappointed. Tell me the reasons why I should believe.
Oh my
Actually,
gosh.
really well. I promise I have friends too, but ChatGPT is a good one.
I had not used ChatGPT as a friend so far. That's a great resource. Sandra, Lori.
I probably also relied on just close friends of, just being able to have some people that were trusted partners who knew when I was in the thick of it, really be a great sounding board of being able to remind me probably in those low moments of like, you've got an incredible background. Like really any company would be lucky to have you. And sometimes even just getting that moment can be like the reminder of, yeah, I'm really amazing at what I do. I bring a lot, and if this is not the right, if I'm not the right fit for them, then that's their loss. And it's easy to say, especially if you're in the thick of it. But I think just being able to remind yourself of the accomplishments and value that you bring, that the right companies, will value and see that.
Yeah. It was funny, and I don't know why I feel compelled to tell this story right now, but like I think my anecdote would be also let yourself emote. You know what I mean? Let yourself feel the rejection. Like my MO is not typically that, right? My MO is how do I act off of this, right? Like what am I going to do to go hustle for what I just did and not let myself do it? And there was times where like just let yourself feel it because it gets easier to bounce back if you just let yourself acknowledge it and acknowledge that it feels crappy, and like it means I can get up tomorrow and start all over again without holding on to it, right? And one of the interesting stories was there was a bunch of people out at the same time. I had friends out, old colleagues out, right? Like we're all like in different JSCs with Never Search Alone. And I remember my best friend in the world got a job and she called me and said, I got a job. And I cried. Like I cried in that I hate that my reaction is when will it be my turn? Right. But I just needed that. Like, and she knew that. And then we celebrated. I could send her a bottle of champagne and and be like, hey, I'm so happy for you, which I was.
Yeah.
But like I needed to let myself like feel that and then like get up and go, right?
Yeah. Acknowledging your emotions, letting yourself feel them so that you can move ahead.
Yeah.
Right. I have so many more questions, but you know what? I am sure so do the audience. So Nisha, do I pass it off to you to moderate the next part? Or Tommy? Because I have not been keeping an eye on
I've been
questions.
trying to keep an eye on questions. I think some y'all have already touched. Ones that I did see. Marie had asked, can you give an example of how you change your marketing approach on LinkedIn to attract the right companies and roles that were a good match for you?
Yeah, I can jump in with that one first. So for me, one of the things that I tried to do was narrow in on the kinds of industries and verticals that I felt my skills would be best suited for. Then actually look at investors in those spaces, follow those investors, and start commenting on articles related to the line of work that I was interested in. And so my pathway was really just to try to start creating a lens where I thought that my background and skill set would be, well suited toward maybe somebody who was in a growth stage, needed that was likely expanding kind of the product, product team, going through a high growth, lens, and actually kind of curating the way that I was commenting on articles or posts around the people who I felt were likely to be recipients of my skills, if that makes sense.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you, Sandra. I've got another one from Amit, was around the networking portion. Networking is seen as a long-term game. You have to keep it warm. How do you keep it strong and resilient when you really need it, right? Like, do you have to actually continually do this even when you don't need it?
I can take that too, because I mean, this is something I'm living into right now. So I don't know, through Product Leader Summit, I had been introduced and actually listen and look up Shelley Perry, who talks about like, as soon as you get your job, the first thing you should be doing is networking to see where your next job is, right? And how do you keep that? You have to keep doing that. And so one of the things I'm most proud of is in my job search, I reached out. I've worked for 4 major companies. I reached out to 3 of the 4 CEOs from those companies and asked them for calls, and 3 out of the 4 did take them. By the way, the 4th one is Larry Ellison, and I ain't going there, right? Like, to ask for help. But and now I talk to them in my new role, like all 3 of those CEOs, like a lot. They take my calls and I can ask questions like, I'm in a CPO role now, and what will the board want to hear from me on AI and what we're doing here, like what, like that kind of thing. And so you have to keep networking, right? Like you have to keep those calls going, and so like you have to keep making time to like have those coffee chats, and it's super important.
Awesome. Thank you, Lori. Anyone else want to ask questions live?
If not, I have more questions that I can ask.
Yeah, I just wanted to wait to figure give people a chance and opportunity. Oh, there we go. Shushma, go for it. You can come off mute.
All right, thank you. My question is around balancing domain versus product as a function focus. Sharing a little bit of background about myself, I've been in the sustainability domain, and if you follow the geopolitical situation right now, it is going through climate technology, green tech is going through the ringer, right? So how do you, I struggle with having to potentially the idea of leaving the domain, but also recognizing the fact that the market is not the greatest for that space right now. So just, are there any, stories or thoughts on that front?
I would say that recently, with everything in the market that's going on, domain expertise is actually becoming more and more important. And as a hiring manager, you could start off the search by saying, I'll take any good product talent, but then you end up with people who are actually have done the exact same thing at a much higher scale, right? And then they end up just ranking higher than other candidates. But for your specific situation, if the domain expertise isn't something that you can carry on, the other ones could be saying, I focused on a company that went from this much revenue to this much revenue, right? Like showing the perils around the scale and the growth, or if there's something around like profitability that you were able to drive in a private equity shop or a certain technology, like find something outside of the domain that the hiring manager is looking for, because that actually resonates. Like those are the stories when I talk to candidates, and they would say when they talk about the growth trajectory, they always get ranked higher than even people who have the right industry expertise.
Awesome. Thank you. Varun, I see you've got your hand raised.
Hey, thanks, Nishit and team. This is awesome. I had a question for Laurie specifically, given what she spoke about resiliency and a few other things resonated. Laurie, what I find myself, and I'm being a little vulnerable here, is trying to reach out within my network and across, and you get a sense folks are on their edge. They don't know whether they'll themselves will have a job tomorrow or not, and that is where I get a sense folks are not too open to really help you out. You attend, these summits, and like 90% of the folks are looking for a role, and you'd want to help out. But how do you sort of, navigate that and be a little selfish and look for yourself in these situations? Would you have any advice?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and we touched on it. Somebody touched on it a little bit. And I had this one experience that I was out networking and I had like a mini meltdown. And I don't know about you all, but I was tired of introducing myself as in transition, right? Like I was tired of hearing myself say it, right? Like I was like, come on, people, this is just fancying up unemployed, right? Like, and I'm tired of it, right? And so I literally went to a whole networking event, didn't talk to a single person because I didn't want to lead with that. And it was a professional networking event, right? And so like, who doesn't walk up and say, here's where I'm at today, right? And so what I learned, and this was with my coach, is lead with something else, right? Like authentically try to connect around something else that might get you into the conversation that if you're reaching out on LinkedIn or you're going to these networking events, people won't respond to you if they know you're looking for a job and they don't have one to give you, right? And they don't know what to do, right? They're like, I want to help you, but I can't, right? And so lead with something else that you have in common with them, because they may know somebody, they may be able to point you to somebody, right? Like, and it's more about the pointer to the pointer, and then networking with the people you don't know. So my coach, when I was talking to her, she's like, you're playing it too safe, Laurie. Like you're playing your network with just the people you know, and you want to get to that round of people you don't know. And so how do you find common connections? And they're the, she's the one who pushed me to go back to those CEOs. They want to hear from you, like from, even though you haven't talked to them in 20 years, right? Like, and hone, what do you have in common? Like I'm a dog mom and she was a dog mom and she brought her dog to work every day. So that's what I connected to her on and said, hey, would you like to have coffee? Not I'm looking for a job, right? And so I don't know if that would help, but it makes you feel a little bit better, about, hey, I'm hunting.
Thank you.
I think we could go on for a while because this is such an important topic, but I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Parul, Laurie, Sandra, Navya, thank you all so much for sharing your wisdom. And given the interest in this topic, we might actually come back and do this another time. And we actually have a couple of questions we didn't get to, but please give us some feedback, all of you. This is the way we improve our programming and make sure we're delivering content to you that is relevant. So please take a moment and give us some feedback. So we'll have an awkward 10 seconds here while you all give your feedback. And then we also want you to sign up for our newsletter, for which there'll be another QR code. So bear with us on that.
I will quickly mention that both Sandra and Navya are hiring managers in their roles, but please do not reach out to them on LinkedIn. Go and apply through their company websites. I think that's the right first step for you all. If you're interested, if there is a fit, please go apply.
Yeah, I also put my email on the chat, so nrg@talent.com. Please feel free to reach out to me there.
Awesome. And we also want you to encourage to join our mailing list. We have a busy roster coming up in Q2 that we will announce remotely. And possibly the only way to stay on top of this reliably is by signing up for the newsletter. So please do. So another 5 seconds on this. Okay, and with that, thank you all so much for coming. I hope this was useful, and we look forward to seeing you in future events coming up. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, everyone.